Welcome to this second part of Football Manager 2018 Tactics, and this part will focus on how you can prepare for match day. And if you haven't watched the first part, make sure to check it out. I will put a link in the description. It will focus on what you do as a new manager with picking a formation, analyzing your team, finding strengths and weaknesses, and so on. But yeah, when we talk about match day, the first important thing usually happens a few days before match day, because you are going to get a scouting report of your opponent. And of course, the details and the quality of the scouting report, how it looks and so on, may vary depending on the quality of your scouts. Like if you do a low league save, you may not even have any scouts and you don't get any information at all. But yeah, you will find like obvious things like strengths and weaknesses, and you can click to see some more about them and so on. Nothing special. I would say the most interesting thing here is usually actually to click the match analysis down here, but make sure you explore everything here, because every manager is different, and those things that you decide to focus on might not be the things I find the most interesting. But if you go to the match analysis, you will see information of their latest game, and there's a lot of interesting things you can find here that you could take advantage of in the game later on. For example, here the heating map tells you where the teams spend most of the time, and you can also see it, especially I would say focuses on attacks here. You can see different arrows, and since this Napoli is the team we're up against, is the team probably should be focusing in the most on. And as you can see, compare the times they've been attacking in the middle to the times they've been attacking on the right flank. Information like this could be very, very interesting, because this probably means that your left fullback maybe should be focusing a little bit extra on defense, while you could probably ease it up a little bit in the middle, maybe not play a defensive midfielder, stuff like that. But remember, this is only information from their latest game, so if you really want to take this to the next level, you're probably going to visit the team for real, go to their schedule, and then you can check out different games that they have played, because of course things can be different around in different games. And I mean, a very clear example of this is a few games ago, I played a team that had basically nothing in the middle, was only focusing on the flanks. And that information, because I usually play with a defensive midfielder, but since I saw that they would probably have like nothing here, instead of using a defensive midfielder, I moved him up and used him as an attacking midfielder. And put my, as I said earlier, like put my fullbacks focus a little bit more on defense, because I know like it was like they were down to like 10-15% of the middle and much higher on both sides. Things like this is how you preemptively can start focusing on your tactics and try to, I mean, you maybe don't want to come up with a completely new formation because your team might not be used to it, but just like instructions, like your fullback, instead of being attacking, maybe it's going to be defense or support. Or maybe instead of a wing back, you're going to use a fullback. That type of things could definitely make a difference. If you want to get more information about the teams, you can click these links, and I will get back to a few of them later on in this video when we analyze our own team. But definitely feel free to explore them on your own. But we will come back to what you can find on these menus when we take a closer look at what our own team is doing during the game. But yeah, definitely here is where match day focus and trying to come up with what we should do with our tactics starts. The next thing that happens a day or so later is you will get pre-match tactical reports, and you get a lot of advices here what your assistant manager thinks you should change around with your team, depending on like what you're up against. Could be changes to formation he recommends, changes to mentality, team shapes, and so on. You could talk like you should replace a player with another. All of these things, usually it tells like you understand what they do. Going from attacking to standard, if you understand mentality, understand attacking, and understand standard, you know the difference. I usually don't listen too much to these advices, at least as long as I'm doing well in a save, at least as I'm winning games, I'm trusting my own ability and usually keep things the way I want them rather than what my assistant manager says. But if you get into a bad stint and really struggles, well, then at least myself, I'm definitely more open to listen to the assistant and start changing things around depending on what he says, his advices. And next step, and it can depend because things here can happen in different order, but you're going to have a pre-match press conference. And some people don't do the press conferences themselves, they send assistants. I would recommend you to do them yourself. And usually I don't notice a huge difference when it comes to how my players perform during the game, but that could be because I'm usually a nice guy. I often like just say positive things, both about me, my team, the opponents. Like I just try to come up like as a nice guy, because I mean you never know when you want to sign a player from the other club, and I don't want that manager to be hating on me when that happens. But if you maybe you're doing the press conference in a bit more aggressive style, maybe you're actually seeing changes on the pitch, what's going on there. But my main reason with the way I play it that I would recommend to do press conferences, the things you say here can affect your players, and that can affect their morale. So I usually try to do that myself, and I try to say things that I believe my players would see as a positive thing. And by doing that, hopefully, I'm keeping them a little bit more happy, a little bit more motivated. And I think it's worth doing the press conference just because that. But as I said, if you're doing a more aggressive style, maybe you can also affect the opponent and what's going on with that. And next thing coming up is the pre-match tactical briefing. And sometimes this one happens before the press conference, sometimes it happened after it. And this is a new function in FM18, and it's an interesting one. I still believe this is a function that the game's creators need to develop and probably going to improve a lot on it during the next couple of versions of the game. I still think it's a very interesting one, but yeah, let's talk about it first. You can see biggest negative things, you can see biggest positive things, and what effects things has had, and what the players has done. Like for example, saying, yeah, we have lost a lot of possession in central areas on the middle third of the pitch, or positive things, we have regained possession well in the central areas on the midfield, middle third of the pitch, and so on. You can see your different tactics, and that's of course the tactics you created under the tactics screen before. And you can either hand it over to the assistant manager, you can skip it, or you can handle it yourself. So let's handle this ourselves. And this is the screen that you'll see. You'll see your squad. You can also select here to watch report of your opponents, backroom advices. These are kind of, you know, that those tactics information we got earlier. And you see your mentality, your shape, and you can also get some recent match analysis. And this is, of course, based on previous games we played. And here you can see also these were the two things that set as positives and negatives before we went to the screen. But as you can see, there's also some other stuff going on here. This is the tricky part, because here are a few players that they are considering. This is a starting 11. Here are a few players they're considering substitutes, and here's a few players they're considering the rest of the squad. And you can change things around here, click different players and so on. I'm just not sure how this works and why we are seeing exactly these players. If you look at the ones you see here, it is my defense line. We are seeing these 4 guys. But why am I not getting to see these guys or these guys or these guys? As I said, we can change it around. We can click other players, but why doesn't my whole starting 11 show up here ASAP? I just think it's weird. And same with the substitutes and so on. But it looks like it's using the filter. Because when you're at your tactics screen or picking your team, you can use a filter. And right now, I'm only showing defenders in my filter. And we're only seeing defenders here. But why is it doing like this? Because I don't have any filter available here, so I can't change it around. Kind of strange. And again, you get the option to hand it over or skip it. But since we said that we were going to do it, let's do it. So I'm going to talk to the team. And then I get a lot of options what I can talk about. And these options are, of course, based on my mentality, my team shape, and also those team instructions, you know, that we were looking at in the last episode, all of these guys. So these are the team instructions that I have selected. These are formation, mentality, shape, and so on. These are different players, because also if you watched the last episode, you know you can give different players individual team instructions. And you can also create match plans here. That's exactly the same thing as we were looking at during last episode, where you can create match plans. For example, like if you are 1 goal behind, ASAP automatically go to attacking, mentality, and so on. But let's just click the formation here, for example. And then I'll get the one that I've currently selected. But I could actually, like, because I might change things around. Maybe I'm going to play another formation since I haven't actually picked my team for the game yet, and click that one instead. But let's say we are going to use this one. And then I get different options on what I can say about it. This time I'm going to say, yeah, we are familiar with this formation. And the guys, they liked it. They agreed with what I said. I got a thumbs up. And as you can see here also, a lot of play liked it, but some didn't care, like Romagnoli here, for example. And then you go on like this, talk to the team. Then maybe I want to talk about the mentality. And we are going to be attacking mentality. And we are using it because we're very comfortable with it. And they didn't care at all about what I said. And you can go on like this. You can talk about the shape and so on. You can start talking about different, all the things here. The thing with this is I've been doing a lot of experimenting with this, and I've also been talking to a lot of other Football Manager streamers, YouTubers, and so on about this thing. And what I experienced and what these guys have been saying to me is we don't see much effect of it. Yeah, maybe we managed to get a few thumbs up, but I have done briefings where I got like a shitload of thumbs up from quite a few different answers here, and this team still played like garbage. And then I had another game where like I failed with everything. It was just like this great. They didn't care about what I said, and we played fantastic. So I'm betting it has a small effect on what's going to happen. But I feel like right now is a very, very, very minor thing, which makes it like really hard to see any results from it. That's why I usually actually just hand it over to the assistant for now. And then I'm going to end it. I think this is a function that can be really interesting in the future. But I just feel like it's not there yet. And they're probably going to develop it in for future versions and make it even more interesting. But at the same time, Football Manager 2018 has just been released. Yes, we spent a lot of time in the beta, did a lot of testing about this, but we could definitely be wrong. I can be wrong, and the people I've been talking to can be wrong. So I think this is a perfect opportunity for you guys to let me know in the comments. Like, if you have experimented a lot with this tactical briefing, what results have you seen? Have you seen actually something that had effect on your team? Something that made your team play better or worse? I think it's a very interesting thing, and I would love to hear from you guys in the comments. Tell me like what's working for you, what's not working for you. Are you doing it yourself? Are you handing it over to an assistant? Let it flow in the comments, because maybe I can learn something from you guys. Next step is to pick the team for the game. And this screen, of course, looks pretty much like the tactical screen, but there are a few differences. And if you remember, when we picked our squad in last episode, these lines weren't around. What the heck is this? Well, these lines are something new in FM18, and what they tell is if the players have starting to getting know each other, just starting to develop some sort of relationship on the pitch. And of course, the greener the line is, the better the relationship. And the best way I could explain this is probably if you played football yourself, and if you play football for a few years, you're probably starting to notice like some of your teammates that you got a connection with them. Like for example, let's say you were a center defender. Maybe you were this guy, and you always played with this lad, and you start to notice like whenever the goalkeeper did a long goal kick, this guy always run up and tried to head it. Like he always did it. And since you learned that he always did it, whenever he ran up and trying to make a header, he always ran up like this. You know that you should go behind to give him cover. That could be something like that. Or another thing, let's say you were a midfielder here, and you know that this lad, maybe he started a little bit further down, but you know that he was always on the run. He was always like pushing his fullback here, and you learn like whenever you put like a cross down here, you know that even though he was down here, you know he was ready to run. So you just put a cross here behind the defense, and 100% of the times he was always there ready to take the ball. That's basically the sort of the relationship that these lines try to tell us. So there is an advantage playing people together, not changing things around too much. Because if you do, maybe you won't get those relationships. And this is also the thing, like when you sign a new player, he won't have any relationships with other guys, and he'll have to start working on this. And a clear example of this here is Mr. Conte, because he's actually been out with a really, really, really long injury. He's been out for 8 months. He just come back, so he haven't played a single game during this save. And as you see, he has no relationships the same way Rodriguez has here with Borini. And to show it even clearly, let's just bring in another right back here, and you see that this guy, he's been playing, so he and Sosa has a relationship. While Conte, that's just back in business and haven't played, haven't getting to know Sosa yet, they don't have a relationship. So that's one of the new things in FM18. Another important thing that have changed in Football Manager 18 is instructions for how your players are going to handle the opponents. In previous versions, like it popped up pretty clearly when you were about to start the game, and you were able to set your instructions for it. It doesn't do that in FM18. Instead, you find it here by going down to player instructions, and here you can find the opposition instructions. This could be a pretty important one, because you can tell your team how to handle different opponents. And you have, as you can see, you have quite a few different settings for tight marking, closing down, tackling, and if you want to try to show them to like a weaker foot and so on. And of course, like maybe they have a superstar, and then you maybe want them to kind of kill him, like tight marking, closing down a lot, tackle hard, and so on. Usually myself, if I have a pretty good assistant manager, I usually just apply his advice to the team. And after I've done that, then I see if there's something I want to change. For example, one thing I often do is if the opponents have a player that's slightly injured, you know that orange box saying that he has a potential injury, then I usually tell my guys to tackle him hard. Because I think like then it's some big risk for him actually getting injured and having to leave the game. Yeah, I know, I'm not a nice guy, sorry for that, but that's what I do. But I usually use the assistant manager's advice as a base, and then sometimes I change things around. Like, do they have a special like superstar? Do I want to do something special to him, or is somebody slightly injured and I want to tackle him hard, trying to have him completely injured? But yeah, it's very easy to forget about the opposition instructions, since this isn't as in your face as it was in earlier versions. Before we start the game, there are two small things I want to show you that's kind of not part of tactics, I would say, but it's very important for your success chance to win it. And I actually forgot to record this, so I'm recording this after the game, but I'm not spoiling anything. But yeah, there is an injury, there is a red card, but let's just pretend you didn't see these things. And the two things I want to mention is, first off, the new medical center. And it's a new function in FM18, and it tells you about what of your players are currently in high risk of being injured. And for obvious reasons, you don't want to start a player with a high risk of being injured if you can avoid it. I mean, sometimes maybe you feel it's worth the risk. It's an extremely important game, but if you can, you want maybe put these guys on the bench. And that brings us into another thing that is very, very important when it comes to success in Football Manager, and that is to have a big team. Basically, my goal with every save is to try to get like at least 2 players for each position that are at kind of the same level, which means like 2 guys here, 2 guys here, 2 guys here, 2 guys here, and so on. And the thought about that is they should be at the same level, so I can rotate a lot. I can always start a team with fresh players on the pitch. And you know, like when you have the tough schedule where you play a league game and it's 2 days rest, then you have a Champions League game and there's another just 2 days rest and another league game, most of your opponents is going to have a similar schedule, and they will play the same players, at least mostly the same players, which means you can get to a game where your opponents have a lot of players that's down to like 88% fitness, 85% fitness before the game even starts. And if your team then is at full fitness level, that's going to give you a pretty big advantage, especially later on in the game when their players are getting really, really tired and they might be forced to sub some of the best players really early. So yeah, like have a game plan and try to have a big squad with quality players that can rotate a lot, because usually my players they never win top goal scorer because my strikers are playing a lot less games than the other club strikers because they are rotating. But I'm having 2 strikers that are scoring a shitload of goals because they are both really, really good. That's my end game, kind of. But of course, when you start a new save, you probably don't have that sort of team if you don't have like a crazy amount of money and can go on a big shopping streak. Have it as your like plan for like season 2, season 3 to build your squad like that. But yeah, enough talking right now. This is the end of the second part of this 3-part series, this 3-part tactics guides. A link to the last guide will be in the description below. And the last guide is, of course, match day. What do we do during the game to actually win stuff? So thank you so much for watching, and I hope I see you in the 3rd and final part.